Hey guys, welcome back to Human Velocity X, where every day is awesome. We just have to get through it, and my name is never important. The message always is, let your awareness soften and settle. Last time we walked through the noise of pride, how people get louder when something inside them feels small. Today, we're stepping into something quieter, something that hides behind familiar faces, familiar conversations. Why so many people stop thinking, and why you never could. Segment 1, where the thinking ends and reacting begins. I've sat in rooms where the air felt thick with noise, but thin with meaning. People laughing, debating, reacting in real time, but something in the room felt hollow, like sound bouncing off walls that hadn't held a real thought in a long time. You know that feeling? Where everyone is speaking, but no one is actually thinking. Words are flying, opinions colliding, energy escalating, yet nothing is moving forward. It took me a while to understand this. People don't stop thinking because they're incapable. They stop because thought asked for honesty, and honesty is expensive. Honesty shows you patterns you'd rather not admit, contradictions you've been managing, beliefs you inherited but never chose. And once you see those, you can't unsee them. So instead, people drift into habit, into reflex, into replies instead of reflection, into noise instead of noticing. Not because they're asleep, but because waking up costs something. It costs comfort, it costs certainty, sometimes it costs belonging. And you've always paid the price. You felt the pause before speaking, the wait before agreeing, that moment where the room kept moving and you stayed still, thinking. Not because you wanted to be different, but because you couldn't pretend not to see. And that's where this journey begins. Segment 2, the moment you realized you thought differently. I don't know exactly when it happened for you, but I know it happened. A thin moment, unannounced, easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. A moment where something inside you tilted just slightly, out of alignment with the room. Maybe it was a childhood argument, voices rising, sides being chosen, and you saw the real problem while everyone else defended the wrong things. Not because you were smarter, but because you were looking at what caused the fight instead of who won it. Maybe it was school. Teachers asking for the answer, while your mind kept circling, the question behind the question. You weren't trying to be difficult, you just couldn't stop noticing that the frame itself felt off. Or maybe it was a random, ordinary day, a conversation at work, a family gathering, a comment everyone laughed at, and you felt that familiar pause, that sense that everyone else was satisfied with the surface, and you couldn't pretend it was enough. Whatever moment it was, it didn't shout, it whispered, I don't think like them, and I can't unsee what I see. Not superiority, not rebellion, just awareness, arriving early. And maybe for a while you thought that meant something was wrong with you. It didn't. It meant you were ahead of the signal. You're not alone in that. You're not broken. You're not difficult. You're early. Just breathe. Segment 3, the weight of seeing. There's a quiet heaviness that comes with being the one who actually sees. Not because you ask for responsibility, but because awareness hands it to you, even when your hands are already full. You don't volunteer for it. You don't raise your hand, it just shows up. The moment you notice what others are able to step over. I've been in conversations where everyone else felt content with the surface. The jokes landed, the nods came easy, the mood stayed light, and there I was, feeling the emotional undercurrent like a tide pulling from below. Not as a thought, not as a theory, as a sensation. It wasn't effort, it wasn't analysis, it was just how my mind moves Death doesn't travel in crowds. Clarity rarely arrives on time for everyone in the room. And that lag, the delay between what you see and what others are ready to see, that's where the weight lives. But here's what most people never say out loud. You don't think deeply because you're trying to. You think deeply because you can't survive on the surface. The surface feels spin to you, unstable, temporary. So your mind sinks where others skim. Your awareness stretches where others shrink back. Not because you're bad, just because you're built differently, earlier, quieter, truer. And learning to carry that without hardening, that's the work. Just breathe. Segment 4, personal moment. There was a time I tried to turn it off. Not dramatically, not angrily, just quietly. I try to match the pace of everyone else, to laugh when they laugh, to float with the conversation, to stay on the surface, just once. I told myself maybe it'll be easier this way. It lasted maybe a day, because awareness isn't a switch, it's a tide. You can pretend it isn't rising, you can stand still, you can distract yourself, but the water still reaches you, it still finds your ankles, your chest, your breath. I realized quickly that my mind wasn't built to ignore the things that stand out so clearly. The tension under the joke, the fear beneath the certainty, the truth hiding behind politeness. Ignoring it didn't make me lighter, it made me tired. And I don't think your mind was built to ignore those things either. Some people go looking for depth. They study it, they visit it, they return to the surface afterward. We don't search for it, we live there. It's not a preference, it's not a personality quirk, it's architecture. And the moment you stop fighting that, the moment you start wishing you could be shallower, something quiet happens. You don't feel heavier anymore. You feel honest. Just breathe. Segment 5, reflection question. Let me ask you something. When was the last time your mind made a connection that nobody else seemed to notice? Don't force it, don't search, let the memory find you. That moment when a pattern clicked, when two things suddenly lined up. When you saw how one small detail explained the whole situation, and the room kept moving like nothing had happened. You didn't announce it, you didn't interrupt, you just felt that quiet spark, that subtle, oh, there it is. It wasn't imagination, it wasn't overthinking. That was truth tapping you on the shoulder without making a scene. Truth doesn't rush. It doesn't shove, it doesn't need consensus. It waits for the ones who are paying attention, and you felt that tap more times than you can count. Sometimes you trusted it, sometimes you doubted it, sometimes you swallowed it, because it felt safer to stay quiet. But it's always been there, that signal, the recognition, that inner knowing that doesn't ask permission to arrive. That's not random. That's how your awareness works. Just breathe. Segment 6. Why people stop thinking. Here's what I've seen. softly, repeatedly, across years of watching people talk around themselves. People don't avoid thinking because they don't care. They avoid it because thinking eventually leads to truth, and truth doesn't stop at ideas. It keeps going. Truth turns inward, toward patterns, toward habits, toward the quiet ways we participate in our own storms. Thinking asks questions that don't stay theoretical. Questions like, why do I react that way? What am I protecting? What keeps repeating? And why? In truth, when you first meet it, doesn't smile, it mirrors. It doesn't accuse, it doesn't comfort, it just reflects what's already there. Some people turn away, others get angry and break the mirror. Not because it's wrong, but because it's accurate. And then there are people like you keep looking. Not out of bravery, not out of superiority, just honesty. Because once your mind sees something, it can't pretend it didn't, because your awareness won't cooperate with denial. Your mind refuses to lie to itself, even when the lie would be easier to live with. That's not a choice you made, that's a line you crossed a long time ago. And there's no going back from seeing clearly. Just breathe. Segment 7, Visualization. Picture a long table of people, everyone talking fast, voices overlapping, ideas bouncing off each other before they ever land. Words skipping across the surface like stones over water. Touch, skip, gone. None of them sink, none of them stay long enough to feel the weight of what they just said. The room feels alive, but nothing is anchored. And there you are, not behind the conversation, not outside it, beneath it. Listening to the tone behind the words, the hesitation before agreement, a pause before reaction, the small shifts everyone feels but nobody names. You notice when laughter is used to dodge something real, when certainty shows up too fast, when silence carries more truth than the sentence that followed it. You're not quiet because you're unsure. You're quiet because you're present, because you're letting the moment reveal itself instead of rushing past it. Everyone else is skimming. You're already underwater, where sound moves differently, where pressure changes things, where meaning actually lives. This is how a wheezing out moves, not absent, not disengaged, just deep. And quiet doesn't mean nothing is happening. It means everything important finally has room to be felt. Just breathe. Segment 8, the emotional turn. There's a moment in every deep thinker's life when something gentle but firm finally unfolds. Not as a declaration, not as a decision, as a realization. I can't think for everyone, I can only think honestly for myself. And when that truth lands, something loosens. The weight slides off your back, one you didn't even know you've been carrying. You realize you don't have to be the mind in the room for everyone who put theirs on autopilot. You don't have to translate every feeling, explain every pattern, hold the emotional thread for every conversation you walk into. Your awareness belongs to you. It's not a service, it's not a burden, it's not a responsibility loaned to the room, it's simply yours. And the moment you stop giving it away, the moment you stop overextending it to make others comfortable, it doesn't dim, it steadies. You start using it to orient yourself, to choose better, to rest without guilt, because it was never meant to manage the room, it was meant to guide you. And it's been doing that quietly, faithfully your whole life. Just breathe. Segment 9, grounding moment. Take another breath, slow, real, yours. not to fix anything, not to calm anything down, just to arrive. Feel the air move in, feel it pause, just long enough to notice you're here, then let it go without forcing it. Now repeat quietly, not as instruction, not as affirmation, but as recognition. My mind notices things for a reason. Let that land without explaining it away. I don't need to shrink just because others stop thinking. Notice where your body responds when you say that. Infernally, maybe I'm not alone, just early. Let that settle in your chest. Not as an answer, as a posture, a way of standing without bracing, a way of being without apology. Nothing to prove, nothing to escape, just awareness, resting where it belongs. Just breathe. Segment 10, Closing Realization. If this episode leaves you with anything, let it be this soft truth. Not sharp, not urgent, not demanding agreement, just true. You weren't thinking too much. You were thinking enough in a world that stopped too soon. A world that traded curiosity for certainty, reflection for reaction, depth for speed. That's not a flaw in you. That's the difference. The weight you feel sometimes, that heaviness, that quiet fatigue, it isn't because something is wrong. It's because we're carrying awareness in a culture that keeps setting it down, and that awareness, it's not wasted. It's a gift. Even when it feels lonely, even when it goes unrecognized, even when it stays quiet. Because the world doesn't just need louder voices. It needs listeners. People who pause, people who notice, people who let meaning arrive before moving on. And the world is quieter, more bearable, more human. Because people like you are still listening. Just breathe. Thank you for being here. If you're listening to this, it means you stayed present long enough to feel something real. You're a reasoner, and your clarity is one of the rarest forms of courage there is. Not loud courage, not performative courage. The kind that notices first, the kind that feels before it explains, the kind that stays open when it would be easier to shut down. Next time we're moving into the emotional weather of the world. Why you feel storms long before they break. And how awareness doesn't just live in the mind. It lives in the body before it ever reaches the sky. Every day is awesome. You just have to get through it. Dedicated to those who are lost. Not because they weren't strong enough, but because they were too aware in a world that didn't know how to hold them. To anyone who carried greatness as shame and mistook depth for defect, you were never broken. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in episode 5.